Awesome. Well, I am excited to be live here with you this morning, Dr. Kim, and to talk a little bit about communication to help some couples out.
I agree. Communication is such an important thing, and most of us don't do it well, honestly,
Mhm.
and we can always improve. And even if you do it well, you can always take it up another notch, I think. It's something that we have to work on and be intentional about. So we can talk about some things to help people do that.
Absolutely. When it comes to communication, if you can improve the communication in your marriage, you're going to provide more peace for your home. There's going to be less conflict in your house. You're going to be more connected. And so it's really key. And so we have a few questions that we had some listeners and some
Yeah,
people submit. And so we're just going to ask you your specific questions. And if you have further follow up questions, always comment down below and we'll get to those comments for sure by responding and typing out a
absolutely.
response later. So, Dr. Kim, here's the first question. What if you are afraid to speak the truth to your spouse? You're afraid to kind of reveal your real thoughts.
Well, it's probably a couple of ways we can take that. First, I'm going to say that is there something, the answer is the question is why? Why are you afraid? Are you afraid something might happen? Do you fear your spouse's reaction? Do you think they're not going to hear you? Do you think that you will upset them or hurt their feelings? And so maybe you're talking about speaking truth into them, and yet you just don't want to do that. And sometimes it's uh, things are going good and we don't rock the boat. So I think all of those, though, are red flags that there's an issue that probably needs to be dealt with in the marriage. And the healthiest marriages and the goal is to be able to be totally transparent and open and vulnerable with your spouse, and where you feel loved and accepted, and with God's help that we can work through any issue. And so we're not afraid to talk about anything.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I love that you're trying to define where it's coming from. Cause I think really we need to prayerfully ask ourselves, like, is this a me problem or is this like an us problem? And
Yes.
regardless of whether it's a me problem or an us problem, I think it would be wise to communicate that to your spouse because it's going to affect them too. But I think sometimes, the fear of telling the truth might come from our own baggage, our own insecurities, our own issues. And then other times the fear is coming from like a learned experience that you have with your spouse of like, oh, this doesn't go well when we talk about
Right.
this. But knowing where that fear comes from is going to help you determine your next steps. And I'll say that the truth isn't always easy, but like Dr. Kim
No.
just mentioned, if you want a deep meaning relationship with your spouse, like you have to learn to be committed to telling each other the truth, even when it hurts. And I think, the hardest part about truth is that we have to lay down our pride and kind of pick up some humility
Mm.
here. Some of the hardest truths that we hear, they're about our own weaknesses. But what does Jesus say? That it's in our weakness that we have strength. We shouldn't expect perfection from each other. We shouldn't expect perfection from ourselves. We don't need to get defensive when our spouse brings something true about us, about our sin to ourselves, because we're not perfect. We need Jesus. We can all agree on that.
Yes.
And so, but if you want to have you're gonna want to work through that to get to a place where you're telling the truth to your spouse so that you can have an awesome marriage and have a deep, meaningful connection.
Yeah, I think so. Figuring out why you're not comfortable with it. And then I think you can share with your spouse, I want to be able to talk to you about anything. And there's some times that I don't feel comfortable talking about. And so can you help me? So again, try to get it as a team. You're asking your spouse to work with you together on this. You're not saying you never listen to me. I'm scared to death to tell you anything. You're trying to work this together as a team, and then you can address the problem. And I think you're going to grow your marriage. You're going to feel more connected when you do that, and it's going to resolve whatever it is that you're afraid to speak, because you've spoke it, and hopefully your spouse is engaging in that and helping resolve the issue.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, with this specific question, I feel like I need to throw a warning out there about abuse,
Sure.
um, because it mentions me afraid. If you don't feel safe in your home, whether it's because something physical your spouse has done to you, or for like the way they talk to you, if you don't feel safe, we would encourage you to get help, to call a domestic violence center in your area, and to go meet with them and to get the help that you need because you know God loves marriages and he wants us to stay committed to each other, but he does not want you to be unsafe. So if you are not safe,
No.
we encourage you to get the help you need and to get out and to get safe. That is the first step. It's not fix your marriage and tell each other the truth. If you're not safe, get safe first.
Absolutely. And I think every city, you've got to have somewhere, someplace that you can go close to you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, the next question is, how can I cultivate kindness and patience with a husband that is not good with words? I wonder, like,
Are there
where this could
husbands that
come
aren't good
from.
with words?
Surely they're
No.
not.
We are
Surely they're
so
not.
verbal and we talk about our emotions so easily. No, I think God's design was that we learn from each other in a lot of ways. I think as guys, we learn how to communicate well and to be a good husband by watching our spouses. Spouses are our wives are naturally, I think, more kind, more patient. They have those that nurturing spirit that God gave them, and so I think first you want to model that for your spouse so that he sees that coming from you. And then I think in that you're treating him the way you want to be treated. And I think it's okay to tell him, this is what I would really need. This is what I'd really like in our marriage. How can we work on this together? Is there something I'm doing that's blocking you from doing this? Is there something that I can help you? Can we pray about it together? Can I pray for you in this? Uh, do we need to go to counseling? Whatever it is, what do we need to do to begin to do that? And a lot of times, I think as guys, we may think something kind or nice about our spouse, but we don't say it. And I think I'd encourage the guys, say it. It makes such a difference when you do. And so, I've had couples tell me that, well, yeah, I tell her that all the time. And the spouse will say, no, you don't. And I'll say, well, do you think it? Yeah. Do you say it? Well, maybe I don't say it as much as I thought I would. So if you think it, say it. But it is something having kindness and patience in a marriage is very important. And so it's an issue that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, definitely, and I'll sympathize with that, like, it's hard, we've been there, my husband isn't the best with words sometimes, not the best with vulnerability, so I'll say one thing that I think is really important here is to have realistic expectations. I think that's key, recognizing that, like, no one is good at everything, and so kinda meeting your spouse where they're at. It's okay for you to talk about your needs, it's okay for you to ask for and to expect some growth, but it's not okay to expect perfection, or that like your spouse
Right.
has like limitless growth. Like, we are limited people. We are sinful, fallen human beings who are not going to be great at everything. And so if you have a husband that's not great with words, he can grow to be more vulnerable. He can grow to be better with words, but to expect him to all of a sudden become a novelist who wants to have deep, meaningful heart to heart talks every night, deep into the night for hours and hours and hours, I would say that's probably an unrealistic expectation, and it's unfair to expect that of him because we all have weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can look at that because I think as wives that there's probably something there that your husband does better than you and will, wives, probably will always communicate better. But what you want in a marriage is that you're both conscious of those differences and that you're working to improve it and work together on it so it doesn't become a barrier or something that pushes you apart. Those are the
Mhm.
red flags I really look for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fun to hop
Yeah.
on here and just answer a couple of questions about communication. What final thing do you want to tell our friends today, Dr. Kim?
When we were talking at the first, there's a stat, and I think it's 95% of couples that say they have good communication say they have good marriages. God is a great communicator. He communicates through His Word, through His Son. Communication is essential to a healthy marriage, and so I would just encourage you, if you say, "Hey, our communication's lagging a little bit," sit down, and talk about it. Maybe you're just not being intentional and spend the time. Maybe you can communicate pretty well, but you just don't make the time for it. Or maybe there's some barriers there that say, hey, maybe it's time to talk to somebody. Maybe it's time to go get some Christian counseling and see if we can resolve this, so we move through this and move past whatever barrier is at that time. So I'd encourage you to just take a next step.
Yeah, that is great. That is really great advice, Dr. Kim. And I'm actually really excited. This month, we have a brand new resource out. It's called our 30-day communication challenge. And so it's a 6-week challenge, and you do 5 challenges every week for 6 weeks. And it breaks down different communication topics. Like, one of them are communication breakdowns, one of them's nonverbal communication, one of them is daily and small like touch points. And so it's a really great resource. So if you're like, hey, this applies to me, like our communication isn't great or our communication could grow, you should definitely grab this resource. So I will link it down below in the comments, and so that you can read more about it and see if it's right for you. But thanks for tuning in today.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.